welcome to another episode of Rise Vermont TV. On this episode, it's our first one of our Health Coach Hotline, and today we have a very special guest, Nate Yandow from Duke's Fitness Center. He's the owner, operator, instructor, everything. And in this series of clips, we're going to be interviewing different people, health professionals throughout the community around tips and tricks really focused on 2019. Little kind of, not necessarily shortcuts, but secrets behind the health professionals. How do you accomplish your goals, etc. So to start us off, Nate, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
First question, just a little bit of background. I mean, how did you get into the world of fitness? My understanding is you've been in it for quite a while.
Yeah, I've owned Duke's Fitness Center for 13 years, but before that, had a lot of experience just, from playing sports to just being interested in working out at a pretty young age. And sophomore in high school is when I started going to Duke's, actually. And, before that, I grew up on a dairy farm here in town in St. Albans and realized how important it was to take care of your body. I grew up with, my father who was working constantly, and burning a lot of calories, seeing the way he ate. I started to say, I'm going to get big and strong and eat like him. That doesn't work so well. So I was chubby as a young kid, and then I actually, ironically, started thinking, okay, I'm playing sports, but I need to get to I could tell I was behind. I wasn't fit enough to keep up with the game, so to speak. So, aside from lack of athletic abilities, it was, okay, I need to get fit. And so that's when I decided to go to Duke's. A good friend of mine started going, and I knew what I wanted to do from that point on because I knew how much it changed my life.
The rest is history from there on out.
Absolutely.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Well, interesting background. You brought up a good point right off the start. I mean, the point you made regarding your dad and eating, it's a proof right there that, everything we do regarding health, and that's a prime example, is so individualized, right?
Yeah.
It may have worked for him, but it didn't work for you, or that
Right.
same model.
He was burning a few more calories than I was.
Just a few, yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. So as far as tips and tricks on, nutrition, goals, exercise, the whole gamut as far as wellness and fitness, I'd like to start out with goals. Before you kind of do anything in any realm of your life, it's really good to have a target to aspire towards. And we were talking earlier before the show about, destinations and journeys. Just regarding setting goals alone, you have different members coming into your gym. My assumption is you'd want them all to set certain goals, and they'd all be, of course, individualized to their own needs. But if we can talk a little bit about tips and tricks, or even overall goal recommendations as well.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times it's really about getting to know yourself better. So I'm a big believer in what we write, what we do, what we say, all those things encompass who we are. So we really need to kind of connect with ourselves. And I think with the busyness of life these days, it seems like there's not enough time to do that. So really taking some time to get alone and really get clear on what it is you want first. And not to be scared about the big goal out ahead. It may be a year out, it may be 5 years out, but just having that ultimate vision way out ahead of you, and then work your way backwards from there. Meeting yourself where you're at and really deciding, okay, what are my main things that are holding me back? It may be nutrition based, it may be activity based, it may be just time based.
Right.
All those things. The clearer you get with the goal, the better it is. And again, it can get complex, but we can really simplify it. Doing too much at once can be overwhelming as well. So again, getting that long-term goal is a good starting point and say, okay, what do I truly want for myself? It could be that you want to just be there for your children and be active and playing instead of sitting on the sidelines. It could be that you want to be just active throughout your life and not just, sitting watching things like sports or activities. You want to still be involved at some level.
Right.
Being safe with it and making sure we're covering each aspect, even in an activity. It's not just, I need to be strong. Yes, we need weights in our life. I'm a big believer that everybody needs some sort of weight and resistance training.
Absolutely, yeah.
Flexibility. We need to make sure that we're mobile and functional. If all we do is lift weights, we're going to be stiff and we're going to limit our range of motion for things. So a functional lifestyle. But again, identifying what matters to you with the long-term goal and then working your way backwards is a key to that process.
That's awesome. And, it sounds like there's so many different aspects here just regarding goals, and we're talking specifically about, kind of fitness or wellness, however we want to coin that term. But more or less, we're in it for the long haul, right? No matter what avenue someone may choose, we want to be able to be as healthy as we can, as long as we can.
Right.
I guess is kind of the purpose. And having a goal, it sounds like, can help you aspire. And those longer term goals, whether it's even a 5-year goal, may sound big, hairy, and audacious at the time because it's so far away. But how do we kind of reverse engineer that to create smaller goals?
Yeah. And that's the key is, again, identifying that big goal. And then when we work our way back, what's our main limiting factor? Maybe we eat really well, but we're not getting enough water. Okay, that's a huge thing that we need to make sure, okay, how do we get more water in? Well, how many times a day are you eating? Typically, we're eating 3 times a day, if not more, if you're putting snacks in there. Right. And that can be an individual thing, but typically we're getting more than one feeding time. Again, there's different people that may fall outside of that, but the idea is when I wake up in the morning, let's get in the habit of having a glass of water first thing. And then before every meal and snack, bam, all of a sudden you're getting 60, 80 ounces of water just by programming and setting up systems, and that's what it turns into. We've all got habits, some are good, some not so good, but they all established with repetition and a focus on it. Some things, maybe it wasn't a focus, it was just, the lack of fighting laziness, because we all have that in us, but it's a matter of, okay, how do I hold myself accountable for it?
Right. And you bring up a great point that I'd like to touch on next is we have these goals, and you bring up habits, which is such an important thing. We have to create these systems, whether you call it systems or habits, day in, day out. It's funny to look at different individuals because the more or less they do, it's kind of the same thing from when they wake up to go to the bed. There is a routine there. But just regarding accountability, after you've set your goal, what are some tips and tricks to help people be accountable? I know for me, I like to have somebody who's kind of in that goal with me, but I don't know if you have any kind of thoughts there.
Yeah. Along the lines of having somebody there with you, for sure. There's you need a support system, whether that's somebody that has similar goals or they could be different goals, but you each are holding each other accountable. Don't feel like you've got to abide by what their goals are and veer off from what you want, but just having that support system is key. And then from there, identifying, like you said, writing it out. You take a sheet of paper and you draw a line down the center of it. On one side, you put a plus. On the other side, you put a minus. What are the things that I'm doing well for my health right now on the plus side? What are the things that I'm doing that aren't good for my health? Where do I want to make trade-offs? Where do I want to make changes? You can say, okay, well, I may be drinking every weekend. That's not helping, my weight, it's not helping. And okay, well, maybe that's a social thing where social is a big part of that, but how can I change that? Maybe I'm going to allow myself, set a guideline around that. How do I still make sure that it's helping myself get to that plus side, but still having that social interaction and making sure it's a positive thing? If we just say, a lot of people say I do great during the week, and then the weekend starting back from zero on Monday, so it's those things, we all have very similar habits with those sort of things, but it's a matter of deciding, okay, where am I ready to make some changes? If we overwhelm ourselves and take everything on that negative list and say, okay, I'm going to get rid of it all, that's only a recipe for disaster, because that's just going to be overwhelming and too much change. The system will just be overloaded, and it's only a matter of time. And
that's what we see, and see all too often. That's why I think it's so important to talk about goals specifically, is that kind of all or nothing mentality. And I'm going to bring social media just in the grips of things for a little bit, because people will post kind of the highlights, it feels, of their successes. But it's important to note the journey that they took to get there, no matter who it is, no matter what it is, whether it's weight loss, whether it's strength building, anything around the field of health and wellness. I don't know if you've seen similar things, and people like to compare themselves, which is always kind of dangerous. But it's good to have that individualistic kind of goal, that plus and minus. Where can I start working today?
Yeah.
Mentality.
Social media can be a whole nother topic that could take all day, but the piece, like you said, they're painting a beautiful picture on social media of all the wonderful things they're doing, where behind the scenes you may be not doing all those great things afterwards. And again, being human, being real. We're
Right.
not perfect people,
Right.
and that's something that we all need to realize. I think if we stop judging ourselves so much, that can make a big difference. Like instead of saying, okay, I'm so angry that I binged on food, or I'm so angry that I missed my workout, or I'm so angry that I didn't get these, instead of judging it, identify, okay, that happened, but why did it happen?
Right.
Was I taking stress to a different place? Was I, I know with running the gym, I tend to put a lot of people in front of me, and then, okay, now I got to see my family too and make sure I'm taking care of them, and then I end up last. And it's one of those things where we need to make sure that we're putting if we don't take care of ourselves and respect our own things that we need, everything's going to crumble around us. So we need to make sure we're finding that balance and reeling ourselves back in now and then.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, those are some great takeaways there for goals, setting yourself up for success, kind of being, it's almost, while accountability in the social system is important, it's got to be started by the individual, right? You've got to start there. I'd like to shift gears really quick to talk about, we've set goals, talked about that a little bit, but talk about the nutrition aspect of wellness. But I'd like to start with hydration. You mentioned it earlier briefly, but as far as tips and tricks, more often than less often, at least from what I see, people are carrying around, simple go-to, whether it's, sugary drinks or, sugary latte, whatever it may be. That's just, how do we switch that kind of to get some more water in our lives?
Yeah.
Because you mentioned it earlier, it's so important.
Well, we need to go to the stores and take them away.
Okay, let's just get rid of them.
No, that's the thing. There's so many things in the food world, nutrition world, that are lack of nourishment, and my family picks on me when I say, "Oh, that's poison, that's toxins, that's." And again, it's not like I'm immune to having some of that stuff.
Right.
But when it comes to drinks, water should be your main go-to. We don't do soda in the household, and again, having it out of your environment is an important thing, but then you say, okay, I stop at the gas station or wherever. It's, again, setting guidelines, and everybody's gonna have different levels of that. The key is, again, getting away from the judgment side and just saying, okay, where am I at, and where do I wanna be? So if you're having those sugary drinks, how can I wean myself back from those? The energy drinks that are supposed to be super healthy,
Right.
I mean, hopefully people realize that those are the last, that's soda with extra caffeine. That's even worse than soda probably. And again, good thing we're not sponsored by anything, but again, that's the whole idea is, water is essential. How do I get that in my life more? Well, a lot of people say, I don't like the taste of water. Well, squeeze a lemon into it. Find ways to get other natural things into it. If we start our nutrition with a natural focus first, real food first, getting things away from the boxes and the packages, getting that real food. In Vermont, granted, obviously the seasons are beautiful, but it doesn't allow us to grow a lot outdoors until, as we're approaching spring. Get a garden. If you don't have it, there's a lot of great local places, farmers markets and
Absolutely.
CSAs, you can get things. So, but yeah, the water intake, I know I'm veering off a little bit. That water intake, identify when can I get it in my system more. A lot of people will say, okay, I bring a water bottle with me everywhere I go. Well, how much did you drink out of it? It's like, okay, it can't, it's not just a puppy on a string. You got to actually,
Exactly.
open the bottle and drink out of it. So we want to make sure that we are, again, not judging, but just saying, okay, where can I get it in the system more and create that habit? Maybe every time people say, well, I can't because I go to the bathroom too much and it distracts me.
Right.
Well, like we talked before the show, we're sitting right now. This is, aside from driving, that's the only time I sit typically during a day. I don't like sitting. I don't feel good sitting, and it's one of those things. If you're in a line of work where you're sitting a lot during the day, it's not good for us in the first place to be immobile. We're meant to move. So identifying when can I get that water intake in, and saying, okay, well, if I have to go to the bathroom more, that's helping me at least move away from my desk a few more times in the day.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
that's a good positive spin to have on it. Absolutely.
Right. Like, don't complain about having to go to the bathroom. You're releasing toxins. You're getting that stuff out of the system. You're hydrating. You're nourishing your body. Those are all good things to do.
Perfect. So it sounds like water is key, and you had mentioned earlier setting it to kind of your meals, having some water before, having water in the morning as a go-to. And I really like the tip around thinking of a way you can naturally sweeten the water, right? If you don't like the taste, squeeze a lemon a lime if you're into that. Adding some fruit, some blueberries, because some of the flavor will leach into the water, and you'll get some of that blueberry flavor in there, which is awesome.
Right.
That's perfect. And speaking of blueberries, regarding nutrition, I know myself. I like to have I have some of my go-to snacks. You mentioned 3+ meals a day. Snacking, it seems to be such a big alternative when people look at their nutrition throughout the day. I just wonder if you could touch a little bit around, these busy schedules that we have. How can we sneak healthy snacks in, or not even sneak them in, but what are some tips and tricks around snacking?
Yeah, again, having food prep is huge. You make sure you identify what it is that I like, that is going to be healthy for me.
Okay.
That's a great starting point. And then from there, having it ready to go, whether it's in to-go containers or just having it in your workspace, in your vehicle. Again, healthy options, but having those areas where you feel like, okay, if I'm commuting or in the middle of something where I need to make sure I get nourishment
right.
and calories in, those are important ways to do it. And again, starting with real food is a very important piece of that process. Now, there's perishable issues if you don't have a refrigerator and things like that. Bringing a cooler is a great way to help overcome that. But again, planning ahead and just having that food prep makes a world of difference.
Awesome. Yeah, especially when you're on the go, it's part of your environment. So if it's in your environment, right? If you're bringing those healthy snacks to work, to the car, even if you've got a long commute, it will just make it more accessible for you and readily available.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you. In the next session, I'd like to talk a little bit about exercise, whether it's at the gym or home. So now we're going to transition a little bit, and we're going to get on our feet and do some of that. Okay?
Yeah, excellent.
Awesome. So we're back talking exercise now. I'd like to talk a little bit about in the gym, but I'd like to first talk about home exercises. We spent some time today talking about routines and patterns, and I know even for me, after a long day, it can be all too tempting to go home and not necessarily eat junk food, but I'm putting my stuff down for the day. I just want to sit and relax. What are some great home exercises or ways to mobilize functionally for us?
Yeah,
throughout the day?
there's a lot of great options to do major movement exercises, and it's just body weight simply use. And I know you're familiar with a lot of them, and that's the idea, is to not overwhelm yourself with getting too complicated at first. Again, identify where you're at with your own fitness, and then from there, think about progressions with
Okay.
it. So if we take a basic squat, we've got a chair here. The process that we want to go through is making sure our feet are shoulder width apart. And again, there's different stances we can add in to get inner thigh a little bit more by opening up the toe. Again, let's not get too complicated. Find what stance feels good for us first, and then reach back into the chair. And we don't want to just get to that point where we're resting and standing, but depending on where you're at, maybe that's where you're going to start.
Right.
But the idea here is this is going to help you get your hips back and keep your body in a more ergonomic position, and it's going to be more functional for your body to move. So reaching back with the hips, and oftentimes when I train people with this, I bring the hands out. That can often help us balance and stabilize a little bit better. Now, obviously, when we progress into weights, that's going to be a lot harder to hold weights out here, and it's going to be a whole different system. But again, for right now, just getting your stability and equilibrium going through that range of motion is a great way to do it.
That's awesome.
A couple of things that come up with people when they do it is, we say keep your torso tall a lot, or I do. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
No, there's no mouse in my pocket or anything. But the idea here is we don't want to keep the torso vertical to the ground. We just want to make sure that when we come back with our hips, that we're not rounding our shoulders. Mm-hmm. And that's the idea is, oftentimes they say, watch where the ceiling meets the wall. That way you can keep your eyes up, keep your head up when you come down. So that can be a helpful tip for people. But again, if people are trying to keep their torso completely straight, that's not what's happening. I mean,
it almost seems
vertical.
impossible, right? Just
Oh yeah, because your knees are going to come forward, which is not a good thing.
Right.
Your hips aren't coming back. So the idea is hips back, torso long. So really lengthening and keeping that tall position rather than rounding the shoulders forward.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
And that's an relatively easy one to integrate into your day, because no matter kind of where we're at, we have some area to sit down. Even if it's a bench outside in a park, sitting down that last 6 inches like you demonstrated, you just kind of collapse into the seat because it's there. But if it wasn't, how do you engage your muscles in that range of motion?
Right, and that's where that next progression would come. Okay, if you're fine doing 10, 12 reps with that chair behind you and you may be touching down now and then, let's see how I do without it.
Right.
You know, and maybe what happens there is your chair low enough? Maybe you need to get more depth. So if we can get lower and still feel confident with that motion, you're going beyond the chair. That's going to get more of your glute and hamstring involved, and it's going to help you, you know, just be more functional.
Right.
So yeah, and then again from there, adding a medicine ball or a weight in your hand. At that stage, I would say put it close to your body, or dumbbells at the shoulders, or even dumbbells up the sides. Those are great ways to incorporate that, and that's going to kick your core in more. It's going to get more muscles involved, and obviously adding more of a load is going to be a better challenge.
Nice. So that's a little bit of progression from a basic squat to for doing it at home, but also a way to get it in the gym, or if you have even access to dumbbells at home, just you can add that into the mix after you feel more comfortable with the chair.
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah, and say you don't have dumbbells or weights. Again, body weight exercises to make that more intense. You can add speed to it. Again, you want your form good first, but you can get quicker reps in, or even throw in the jump. You want to land light on the feet when you're throwing any type of jump in, and again, make sure it's at a level that you're comfortable challenging yourself with. But those are great ways to incorporate more intensity.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that's, as I'm thinking about it, you know, that's a mini workout I can do with my couch.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Just to start out, a great way to get get your heart rate up and some more functional fitness into your day.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. In between innings in a baseball game with
Yeah.
baseball season coming up, you know,
That's perfect.
instead of grabbing a beer, you can grab the floor, grab some push-ups, grab some squats, you know,
Yeah.
do some different things like that. Yeah.
That's awesome. Are there any other exercises you can think you'd like to talk about regarding progressions?
Yeah, well, let's show one more leg exercise. You know,
Okay.
I was telling you that I think I broke my butt this morning doing some Bulgarian split squats. So maybe I'll have you demonstrate these.
Okay.
Okay, but a partnered type of activity here. So if I go and take a knee, and again, if you don't have a partner, you can go with a chair, with a foot up on a chair too. So you're going to be essentially in a lunge position. But the idea is more weight is going to be in your front leg. And then if I have you in front, I don't know what the best angle is here, but you...
Might be over to the side.
Okay.
So if I lunge over here, is what you're saying?
Yep.
And then you...
And then I'm going to put my hands in cradle. So I'm going to interlock my hands. Are you tight too?
A little bit.
Okay, so stretching could be the next part of this.
Stretching primarily.
So interlocking the hands will give him a good support, and we're going to have him stand up nice and tall and then come down nice and slow. So this is a Bulgarian split squat. Again, this is something we could eventually add weights to, but that's something that's definitely easily done, and as far as no weight needed, and a great challenge for the legs.
And that one right there, I'm noticing it's a lot of single leg kind of in the front as well, but my core had to work there.
Right.
For stability.
Yeah.
Which is always good.
Yeah.
And switching legs with that. Now, is something like that, you mentioned the chair, but I could also do that, you know, keep defaulting to my couch, but, you know, putting your leg up on the couch.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
you don't need a person to do that with. You can just throw a leg up. Again, putting your positioning so that your foot is far forward enough. We don't want the knee to drive too far forward beyond the knee. You can be in line with the toe or even a little bit in front of it. But the idea is with this squat, you're actually getting strength, but you're also getting a great stretch on your hip flexor, on your back leg. It's building great range of motion for the body.
Okay.
So again, adding functionality to your strength.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Push-ups are another great exercise, you know, that are for the upper body, obviously. Push-ups and planks are great variations we can mix in. And again, progressions. So say you have a stable chair that you can work off from. Going to the knees. You know,
so this could be kind of entry level one is what we're talking for the push-up.
Absolutely. So thinking about that progression, you want to let your hands shoulder width apart, let the elbows drive back.
Okay.
Oftentimes we find people going super wide with the elbow. We want to think about what's more functional for our joints. So letting that elbow drop a little bit is going to be a much better option. From there, we could progress down to the floor. And then again, from the knees is fine to do.
Still from the knees, right? While you're comfortable in that position.
Right. So from that position here.
Okay.
And then the next phase of that would be, say you wanted to go to the feet, but you feel like you come down, but can't come back up with it. The next progression would be going down from the feet, drop to the knees, push away, and then come back up on the toes.
Oh, okay. A little bit of both worlds there.
Right. And then again, from there, you can throw in your push-up, you can throw in some rotations, depending on what level you're at. again, lots of opportunity. You could throw some claps in there with your push-ups. I'm not here to show off, though.
Add some claps, no big deal. Add some, that's another great one. And again, different levels. So seems like the higher you start with the push-up progression, the easier in general it'll be. And then as you progress, you're lowering down with the goal to be on the ground.
Absolutely.
Eventually. Okay.
Yeah, and that's not just a chest exercise. A lot of people think, oh, that's chest. You're doing chest, back, low back, core. So a lot of muscles are working. Your legs are engaged. So it's a great total body type of movement.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, perfect. Those are some great exercises that people can get in at home throughout their day. Is there any other kind of mobility stretching exercises that you can think of that you'd like to go over?
Yeah, so stretching is a great piece of the puzzle that we need to make sure we're making time for.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big believer in warm up, meaning like say you go for a walk or a jog or some type of mobility movement to get the heart pumping, and then go into the workout unless muscles are feeling tight after the warm up. Mm-hmm. I'm not a big, okay, let's stretch a lot before the workout. Again, some people vary with that. That's just the way I feel best.
Just kind of generally get the body temperature up or the heart working, then you're good to go.
Again, if you feel like after you do that something's really tight, definitely stretch it out. But in my opinion, what we need to do is after that happens, you can get into the workout.
Okay.
So yeah, from there, the stretches are mainly beneficial after the workout. It kind of leads you into that recovery phase.
Okay.
So bringing our feet nice and wide, we can get a nice lateral lunge. This is great for opening up the hips, getting inner thigh, leaning into that, making sure your hips come back. So again, your knee is going to be in line with the toe or even behind, and then switch to the other side. Getting a breath in between is very important with that.
So you're not holding your breath, you're breathing through these stretches as well.
Right.
That's important. And now you mentioned stretching afterwards. Before we continue, how long would somebody want to hold stretch?
So there's dynamic.
1 second?
Yeah, I mean, there's dynamic stretches. There's different options with your stretching, but the idea here is listen to the body, lengthen it, get a breath, and then move forward. You don't need to hold it for long periods of time, but if you get to a position, take a breath, and then transition out of it. That's a good way to kind of let the body work with the muscles and the breathing.
That's good to know. And it is so individualized, right? You stretch there, but I maybe only be able to go so less than you are. That's my end range of motion, right, for that stretch.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing is listen to the body. Your stance width. The wider you go, the harder that stretch is going to be, or the more range you're going to get. Okay. Find the range that works for you to start with, and you may find that as you start narrower, you may be able to get a little further out.
Awesome.
Yeah. Another good one to just get through the chain, through your spine, starting with your feet together, reaching up, kind of reaching for the sky, reaching for the ceiling, get as high up as you can, and then gradually folding forward. You're going to feel low back, glutes, and hamstrings. And then whether your hands can get to the floor or not, what we want to do at this point is if you need to, you can bend the knees to get to the floor. If not, try to keep the legs straight, and then you're going to walk the hands out. So here, you know this one, don't you?
You're doing inchworm?
Yeah. Go ahead. I don't want to bump heads with you. We look like we're ready to go. Okay, so you walk that out. Core is nice and strong, and then at the bottom, let's dip the hip a little bit. Perfect. And then walk it back. Awesome. So that's getting right on through the spine.
Nice.
You can feel the shoulders. I mean, it's something that you're familiar with. So it's
a great one. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorites.
Yeah.
And as far as that one, you're getting full kind of mobility as well. It's a great.
Yeah, and it's strengthening through the chest and shoulders at the same time.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for your tips and tricks, Nate. I think that's going to bring us to the end of our show today. Please stay tuned for next month's episode of Health Coach Hotline with another local professional in the area.